my conversion was the beauty of the church. See, I grew up in a faith tradition that was pretty void of symbols, of art, of beauty, I guess. You know, there were no symbols. There was one big stained glass cross. It wasn't a crucifix, it was a cross in the back of the church that I grew up in when I was a kid. But by the time, you know, I started playing music in high school, on the Sunday service, they had installed can lights, and we were playing up right in front of it. You could hardly see the one symbol we had left in that church. But I remember one of the important parts of my conversion was I was really burnt out on the way that I had grown up doing church. I had played in the band for a long time, for the youth group and for the Sunday morning service. And like I said, you know, these can lights came in and obstructed your view of the cross. We were center stage. The pastor giving his sermon was center stage. Behind him was the piano. Behind the piano was the choir. And behind the choir, up in the loft, in front of the stained glass window that we had, was us and the band. And I just got kind of tired of the whole concert and the performance setting. And I remember the first time I walked into St. Vincent's, our parish, I got there and the center of attention was that big crucifixion scene, and right below it was the altar where the holy sacrifice of the Mass happens. And even when the priest went over to give his homily, it was off on the side, you know, below the statue of St. Joseph. He didn't take center stage except during the holy sacrifice. But when he was talking, when people were singing, you know, they were off to the side. There was that first Mass I went to was presided by a retired priest who, my best guess is he's in his mid-90s. And for music, there was no band, there were no fog machines, there were no can lights. There was an organist back in the choir loft who I couldn't even see, and there was an old lady canting, just one woman, you know, chanting the psalms and asking for us to respond. And you know, she, as we continued to go to Mass at this particular Mass with the same priest and the same cantor, I mean, it was funny, you know, sometimes her voice was faltering, but and sometimes it was off key. But one of the things that really struck me was that there wasn't a single thing about the Mass that felt like a performance to me. I didn't feel like I was watching TV. I felt like I was worshiping. I'd never been at a place where there was so much silence, space for reflection. And that was really impacting to me because I had gotten so tired of all the noise. I mean, you know, it's these televisions all over the campus I was going to school at when I started going to Mass. So there were, you know, music everywhere. There was no silence anywhere. In the dorms, in the chapel, there was nothing on that campus that was silence. And so I got to St. Vincent's and there was all this silence. It was almost overwhelming. I didn't know what to do with myself. But it felt like I was praying. And there was something beautiful about that holy silence in that church.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita.
I'm from Zimbabwe, and I've been blessed to have lived on 3 different continents. And I've attended Catholic church always, and I've heard the Catholic Mass said in maybe 3 or 4 different languages, and Jesus is the same. God is the same. The Eucharist is the same in all places. It's the same Mass. It's the same, you know, readings. It's the same word. No matter where you go, you can always feel at home.
last 5 years of my life where I had some major health issues, and I went through a series of overnight of requiring 5 spinal surgeries. My church was real supportive, and they were there for me, and they let me know that they were praying for me, and they brought me dinners, and they took me places when I needed to go because I couldn't drive, and everything was kind of hunky-dory with the church, and everybody was real supportive. When the second surgery came, everybody was kind of like, okay, we've been there, we've done that, we're not sure, what to think about the second surgery. When the third and the fourth and the fifth surgery came, people in my church really began to question my spirituality. It was kind of like there must be something wrong with me spiritually, that God wasn't healing me, because I'd gone forward for prayer at the altar many times and been anointed with oil. And to be truthful with you, I was really despondent, because I thought, here I am, I'm coming to God, and I'm giving Him my everything, and I'm saying, Lord, this is what I really believe. I really believe that you can heal me, and you're not healing me. And this is all my hope. I have no other hope other than this. And then as the people began to lose hope in me and for me, I was empty. I had nothing left. At that point in my life, I was serving on the church board. I was serving on the church worship team. I was on several other ministries, and I was just empty. My first Catholic experience was at the soup kitchen. Adoration was taking place. I don't know what it was. I said, but there was this most amazing feeling. From that experience with the adoration, I just kept coming back and just coming back and just coming back. And when I really learned that that was Jesus in the monstrance and that was adoration, I wanted nothing else. And I learned that there was meaning in suffering, and that all the suffering that Jesus had allowed to happen in my life, there was purpose and that there was meaning for it. And I thank God every day for the things that He continues to bring into my life that bring me closer to Him and make me stronger. The pain and the suffering in my life haven't completely gone away, and I use those to allow myself to become more like Him and thank Him for it. And I often use my pain and suffering to pray for other people, and I pray and I thank God that He allows it into my life, because I think often that sometimes it's a gift that is not afforded to everybody.
Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Dios te salve Maria, llena eres de gracia.
Our whole beginning of the process was one that was somewhat intellectual, but getting over some of the objections to the Catholic Church. And from there, another odd twist in the story is that my dad had a computerized Bible product called a Find It Bible that was selling like hotcakes over in Europe. And his European distributor got him an opportunity to meet the Pope. So he went over to the Vatican as a Presbyterian minister and spent a week in the Vatican. And he got a private audience with Pope John Paul II and came away from that experience deeply impressed with the level of spirituality and holiness that he saw in all of the people he met there. So he came back and wrote an article about this experience that was basically endorsing Christian unity, and it came out in the Presbyterian Record, which was the denominational magazine in Canada. And all hell broke loose, because there were people actually calling for heresy trials based on my dad being very prominent in the church. He was also a clerk of the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. So through all this, Kathy and I had graduated from Franciscan, and we started shopping around to different denominations. We went to Foursquare Full Gospel Church, we went to a Methodist church, we went to a Presbyterian church, even once we went to a Catholic church. But at least for my part, I found it very, very sort of cold and distant and different, completely different from what we had grown up in, which was a very warm and a small environment where everyone knew everyone else. The Catholic Church that we lived close by to wasn't like that at all. So despite all this, there was a guy named Scott Hahn who recorded a tape called Protestant Minister Becomes Catholic. And my dad had come down to Franciscan U for a year to teach as a visiting professor, and Scott was coming the next year. And through a mutual friend, he handed off this tape, and we listened to it together. And at the end, I'll never forget, my dad said to me, you know, I can't argue with anything this guy's saying. So that was really the point where I went home and I said, Kathy, I think I want to become Catholic. And she just about fell over, but you know, thanks be to God, decided to go through RCIA with me. And at that point, I think she was trying to kind of pull me back and guard me from a church that she and probably most of her family thought was going to take the family to hell.
I came home from a trip from Mississippi to help my sister deliver her baby. And I was gone, I believe, maybe 10 days. He picked me up at the airport and he said, I'm thinking about becoming Catholic. And all I could think about was, thank goodness I was only gone for 10 days. We can fix this. And I thought if I had been gone longer, he might have gone and become a priest or something. And I thought, what on earth happened? So we began to investigate, and my purpose of the investigation was to save his soul and to keep him away from this church. And so here I am, a Protestant studying there. Had no interest in the faith. And I just would go and memorize the information and actually consult with my pastor. Well, this is what they're teaching me. And he's like, no, this is what we really believe. So, and then I learned in the classroom that, you know, what came first, the Bible or the church? And I'm thinking, well, of course the Bible came first. What on earth did you base your church on? Well, you know, that's not true.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres.
So we got through that, and as it turned out, she's become a much better Catholic than me, and it's worked out just beautifully. But that's how we got from being Presbyterian in my case and Wesleyan Methodist in her case to being Catholic today.